Hi, I'm Kylie Ambu with WGBU's Mutually Inclusive, and today we're talking Super Bowl Sunday. The Kansas City Chiefs take on the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend, and history will be made as Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts become the first duo of black quarterbacks starting in a Super Bowl. Here to shed some light on this feat is Dr. Lewis Moore, a Grand Valley State University historian and expert on the intersection between race and sports. He's written books like I Fight for a Living, Boxing and the Battle for Black Manhood, and We Will Win the Day, the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Athlete, and the Quest for Equality. Welcome, Dr. Moore.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and you are the perfect person to have on here because you are also working on a third book. Can you talk to me about what that background is?
Yeah, so the third book, I've been working on it for 2 years. It's on the black quarterback. Actually, I had a sabbatical last fall, wrote about 130,000 words on it. So now I'm just editing it, doing all the edits. And so it's really looking at Doug Williams and Vince Evans, the two first black quarterbacks to start against each other. So that's September 30th, 1979. And it's a book about their lives, but also how we got to that moment. So it's all about the black quarterback, studying systems, the racism in the league, college quarterbacks, so trying to throw everything in there just to explain that one singular moment.
Absolutely, and that makes you the perfect person to talk about this singular moment that we'll have coming up. Knowing about all the barriers and the history that's been a part of this, how big is the Super Bowl coming up?
I think it's huge, and I say for a couple of reasons. One, on the field, and because black quarterbacks for so long have been kept out of the position, and this position is just not any position. It's not like the center in basketball. It is the most important position in all of sports. It is the guy who is the face of the franchise. It is somebody who's thought as intelligent, who's a great leader. And historically in America, we haven't seen that in black men. That is to say, people don't look at black men naturally and say, that guy's smart, that guy's a great leader. And so for so long, it's taken a long time for black quarterbacks to be allowed to be in that position, just to have that opportunity. That's on the one hand. I think on the other hand, there's a lot of stuff going on in our country about race and about seeing people's full humanity. And I think on that Sunday, when you have millions and millions, maybe 200 million people watching, right? And they have to sit there seeing these guys in this most important position at the same time where we're dealing with policing, we're dealing with race issues, we're dealing with issues where books are being taken out of school that are dealing with black history. And now we're in there looking at these guys being leaders, trying to, in the biggest moment of all of sports, trying to win the game and everyone rooting for them. I think it goes a long way, hopefully, right? I'm a pretty hopeful person, to help do some healing in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talked earlier about seeing, the whole person and every facet of the players, when I talked about this issue with some of the members of our production team, we had one of their leaders, Andrew, say, for so long, black players were only talked about in terms of their athletic, physical ability, but no one really looked and said, that's a smart player. Has that changed?
Ooh, a bit. And I would say, like, if we look at someone like Jalen Hurts, who's actually the opposing quarterback to Patrick Mahomes, even when he came into the NFL 3 years ago, there was talk about him being a different position, being a running back, being a wide receiver. And for decades, that's what black quarterbacks got. Okay, you're good in college, but you're just an athlete, so we're going to switch you to a position. I think now, seeing the success of a Jalen Hurts, that gets better over time. It gives more people opportunities to have that shot and not really have to deal with, well, you're not smart enough to play this position. I think the other thing that's happening here is that the position is changing. It doesn't mean that you're not smart. It's just that the NFL for so long had its own system. We don't have time to go into the system, but it changes in the 1940s. And what's happening in the 60s and 70s and 80s is that college is changing, but in a different direction. They're running, if some of the older listeners are out there, they might know, they're running the veer formation, they're running the wishbone, they're running the triple option, and the NFL is doing a pro style. But the majority of those quarterbacks in the college system are runners, right? That's what it's for, not passers. Now the NFL is adopting some of those college offenses. And so guys like a Jalen Hurts, or this year like a Bryce Young, who's probably going to be the #1 draft pick or #2 draft pick, because the Bears have the #1 pick and they shouldn't waste it on a quarterback. They're coming in ready-made because the NFL is adopting into that system.
And when we talk about, you said just the opportunities that are there aren't as many, it seems, at the moment for black quarterbacks. When we look at the league overall, there is, about 70% of the league are black, but there's a very small percentage that are starting quarterbacks. Can you talk with me more about that?
Yeah, and I think it just goes to the history of it, right? There's like 32 teams. There's only so many positions. It's really hard to get there. And again, I think for so long the NFL has been closed-minded because, as your producer says, you see the athlete and that's all you want to see. And what happens is it does take a long time to develop an NFL quarterback. And I think a lot of teams are very impatient. They want results right away. And if you got somebody who you think is a runner, you're going to say, you know what, I'm not going to give him time. I'm just going to put him into another position, make him play cornerback, make him play receiver. That still happens a lot of the time. But again, like we said, it's getting a bit better. And I think seeing the success this Sunday of a Jalen Hurts is going to have a tremendous impact down the line, because Hurts is one of those guys who they thought was only a runner, and now all of a sudden he's able to lead his team to a Super Bowl. I think you'll see more NFL teams taking a chance on those type of guys.
Absolutely, and both of the QBs in this Super Bowl have had really thanked Doug Williams, who is the first black quarterback to lead his team into a Super Bowl and win as well. And in a recent interview with NPR, Williams said, and I quote, quarterback, it's not about whether or not a black guy could lead a team, it's whether or not they'd get the opportunity to do it. And you're saying right now with someone like Jalen Hurts, that's a coach saying, I'm going to give that person an opportunity, and look at how it's turned out.
Right, and that's about building around the guy's skill set. Now with Doug, like historically for the listeners, you didn't have to really do that because he's a classic drop back thrower quarterback, right? He wasn't going out there scrambling. And what's interesting about that, and this is why they thank him, is because Doug is part of this project I talk about in my book. During the 1960s, his coach at Grambling, Eddie Robinson, was one of the greatest college coaches ever. He realized that he'd been putting out a number of pro players, but not a quarterback, not a black quarterback. So he made it his mission to develop a quarterback for the league. Now, he does this in 1964. Doug Williams is not drafted until 1978. So it shows you how long it takes. And he had a few successes, James Harris and Matthew Reed, but Doug is that guy. So it takes him about 15 years to figure out this formula of how to get a black quarterback into pro football, right? But other guys are runners. And the league had to be patient for him. It's the same thing what Doug says. Give him that opportunity. One of my favorite quotes I saw. I know I'm talking a lot, but
no, we love it. Keep it going.
There's this black quarterback, goes to a black school, Elizabeth City, doesn't get drafted. This is 1969, and he signs to the Los Angeles Rams. And he just says, look, I can be as good as the game lets me be, right? As long as you get me the opportunity, then I'll be good. Now, this guy's name is Johnny Walton. He plays for the Rams a couple years, never makes the full squad, gets cut. He winds up making it. He goes to the World Football League, plays with the Philadelphia Eagles, never starts a game in his life because he never really gets those true opportunities. But he hangs around enough, right, to just play the game. And through his career throughout the 1970s, you see it. If you just give me the opportunity, I'll succeed. And so many guys just want that opportunity.
And you talked about, years and years of working towards this. This is year 57 for the Super Bowl. Why is this the first time we're seeing it? I think that's a question on everyone's mind.
Right, it just took so long. So when the first Super Bowl happens, if my math is correct, 1967, it should be Green Bay Packers, Kansas City Chiefs. There are no black quarterbacks in the league. And what was happening at that time is if you had played quarterback, and certainly there's a number of black quarterbacks in college because there are HBCUs and they all have black quarterbacks, they get switched. And so even if you look at that Green Bay Packers team, they have a black quarterback on their team, but he gets switched to safety. It's Willie Wood. He is a I believe he's a Hall of Famer. He plays a quarterback at USC in the late 1950s. Has to beg NFL teams just to get a chance, writes letters to every team. And it's Green Bay Packers that give him an opportunity, but they're like, you're not playing quarterback for us. Yeah, so you have to switch your position. And that's the history of so many guys. And that's why it takes so long, because the NFL was reluctant to give guys a chance and just to work with them.
And not even on the field, but when we talk about off the field and we look at the salaries of some of the players, it seems quarterbacks take home a lot of money. And a lot of people have said, is that a reason too? Is there systemic racism when we look at who's making the most money? Oh, well, we don't want people of color, taking that paycheck home.
Well, so that's the most interesting thing, and if we look at it today, some of the leading the people who get the most money are the very few black quarterbacks, right? And so Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson's supposed to make a lot of money, but he's in contract negotiations. So they take a lot of money and they take a huge chunk of your salary cap, right? And so maybe there might be reluctance there, but I think that how much money you take up is not necessarily the point. I think the point is like where you're going to draft this guy, right? Because what happens now is the way the salary cap works in the NFL is if you have a young quarterback, like if we look at the Cincinnati Bengals, they're in perfect shape right now because they have Joe Burrow on a rookie contract and he doesn't make a lot of money. The moment he signs, that things change and you have to shuffle it around. So when it comes to black quarterbacks, are you willing to draft them early in the first round and play them right away? We've seen last year, Chicago Bears draft Justin Fields pretty high. It's been kind of up and down with him right now. But if they don't play him, they're in trouble, right? Because they spent so much resources on him. So that's how the money works when it comes to the black quarterbacks. Like, are you going to play him? And then when you play him, are you going to pay him? And I think then once you get to $200 million, that's when a lot of criticism comes, right? If you look at Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys, makes so much money. It takes a lot of flack because the Cowboys haven't been great. They've been good. And I don't know if that's connected to him being a black quarterback or that's connected to him being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great insight when it comes to, why are things the way that they are. When we talk about the players that are in this Super Bowl, so we talk about Mahomes and we talk about Hurts, how do you view them in comparison to quarterbacks before them? Are we looking at two of the future greats?
I think Mahomes is the greatest ever.
Okay.
Look, why wait? I don't know how long I'll be here, but I don't want to wait. I mean, Tom Brady spent 20 years in the NFL. I don't want to wait another 15 years to declare this guy the best ever. We lived in the age of social media. Things happen 24 hours, just like that. So why not say this guy's the best ever, and then say it for the next 15 years instead of me having to wait for so long. I think Hurts is going to change the game just because of his speed and that dynamic to run the ball. We've seen a little bit with that with the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson being an MVP. But I think now Jalen Hurts is going to open doors, I've said before, for other guys. And I think that's his legacy. Whereas Mahomes will go down as the greatest. I think Hurts is going to be in that legacy with guys like a Randall Cunningham, where they were runners too, and all of a sudden you start to see for a little bit teams shift to that. We need a really athletic quarterback, and I think Hurts is going to change the game in that way.
Awesome, wonderful. So Hurts is changing the game, but then you guys heard it right from his mouth. Yeah. The greatest of all time will be Mahomes.
Greatest of all time will be. We just say it now, right?
All right, we got you on camera. We're quoting you on it.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, when we talk about the players, I mean, there's accolades, there's so many things we can say. When we talk about the coaching staff, though, it isn't really representative of some of the great players that we're seeing. And the NFL has come under a lot of fire for the lack of diversity in its coaching staff. Do you feel like that is going to change over the next few years?
That's a great question. I'm gonna say no for a while, and I think part of it is that because it comes from the owners, and the owners, you're not gonna tell a billionaire what to do. I don't care if it's with an NFL team or just in general in society. And part of what's going on, the NFL has a Rooney Rule, and it's that they have to give minority coaches, whether it's a man or a woman that's a minority, an opportunity to interview, but you don't have to hire them. And so every cycle we get guys who get interviews, they don't get hired. A great example is to look at the Kansas City Chiefs. They have offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. And most people say if Bieniemy was young and white, then he would be a head coach already. He is the offensive coordinator of the greatest offense, right? He's the offensive coordinator of the greatest quarterback ever. And he's still not getting a chance to be a head coach. And to me, that means that there's a problem. Now, there is hope. The NFL has a minority internship to help young guys out, and even the Grand Valley connection is we have an ex-Laker football player who is working with the Cleveland Browns. He's actually their quarterback coach, and he's black, and he played receiver. I believe Israel Woolfolk. And if you look at how people get hired, it's often quarterback coaches who eventually get an opportunity. Now, I don't know what happens with his career, but he's one of the few black quarterback coaches in the NFL, GVSU alum, and it's because of the programs that the NFL has put in place to help young minority candidates out. Now, obviously, he had to work his butt up. Can I say butt? Sorry. He had to work his tail off to get there. But I think it shows you where the NFL can go, where if it wants to truly get where it needs to go.
And you said can go and get where it needs to. Do you feel like it has to happen from the top down, from coaches down, to really make significant changes?
Yeah, it really from owners, because owners, like I said, you can't tell them what to do, and they're really used to people like them, and they also worry about their team. And when you have a black coach, that means there's two people at the face of an NFL franchise. It's the quarterback and it's the coach. And I think a lot of owners are reluctant to just go ahead and say, like, this black guy is the face of my franchise. And so that's going to have to change, and I don't know how they change that. They have to be comfortable. They have to be in that position. And sometimes the owners select guys they want to go golfing with, and maybe they don't see this black guy as someone they want to hang out and spend time or go golfing with or have a few beers with.
Which is
if
a
I can
whole,
say that.
oh,
It's
absolutely, a whole other thing too. Absolutely, like we could spend a whole other interview on that.
But if you look at coaches today, like let's say, the Bengals coach, the Packers coach, the Niners coach, the Rams coach, the Dolphins coach, they're all from the small little cohort of friends. And the Niners coach's dad was an ex-coach, so Kyle Shanahan's dad is Mike Shanahan. Sean McVay, who coaches for the Rams, I believe his grandfather was a coach inside the NFL, pretty high up. And so the other guys are their friends, and that's how the connections get made. And now all of a sudden they're head coaches. Black coaches don't have that. Right, they don't have this legacy of my father was a coach, so now I'm getting an opportunity, and so it's going to take a while to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've been an absolute resource and just wonderful to chat with. I'm going to close with the most controversial question.
Okay.
You might get some love, might get some hate.
Right.
Who are you rooting for this Sunday?
Oh, Patrick Mahomes.
It wasn't even hard for you.
It's not hard, so I could be right. I mean, I love Jalen Hurts, and I think Jalen Hurts is going to be the face of the NFL. But Patrick Mahomes, that means I'm right. When I say he's the greatest quarterback ever, I need the stats and the wins. But I also think the Chiefs being there 3 times in 5 years are going to make them a little bit more comfortable in the biggest game, right? It is like, I know the World Cup is huge, but for us, this is it. This is our game. And I think they're just so comfortable. And when those lights are shining bright, you never know how people react when they haven't been there in a while. And I think that and Mahomes will give them that advantage.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Moore, for your insight and your game predictions. We'll see if you are correct on that.
Don't bet. I'm sorry, Coach. Do not bet. And if you lose your money, it's not my fault.
Yeah, you heard it from him. You listen to him. Just don't put your money on him right now. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Moore.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for watching. We are wishing both teams the best of luck this Sunday. And be sure to keep up with videos like this on our Facebook and our YouTube channels. For Mutually Inclusive, I'm Kylie Embu, and we'll see you next time.
Support for Mutually Inclusive comes from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.